In terms of raw power, the Mazdaspeed3 still reigns over the hot hatch market. Its 280 pound-feet of torque to this day still seems preposterous and hugely intriguing. Is it too much? On the face of it, the answer would seem yes. But let's look deeper, spend some time with this hatchback, and see if there's more to its personality. Of course, with 280 pound-feet of torque, launching the Mazdaspeed3 is difficult. We found the best was to pretty much release the clutch at about 2,500 RPM and then short shift after first gear at about 6,000 RPM because you can really feel the power band fall off. Let's give it a try. Violent launch, spins at the top of first. You want to grab the next gear at about 6,000 RPM. You'll hit 60 in about 5.8 seconds. And the quarter mile at 14.3 seconds at 100 miles an hour. You can really feel the power band fall off at about 6,000 RPM. And for our 60 to 0 braking test, the Mazda took 117 feet. The figure 8 with the Mazdaspeed3. This car is kind of silly. Got a pretty high level of grip mid-corner. Coming out of the corner though, it's just incredible how this thing delivers power. It's not as lively mid-corner as I was like. In fact, you just find yourself up against the limits of the front tires when you're trying to modulate the throttle. It makes cornering, especially on our handling track, rather difficult. Bit of understeer on turn-in. Tail actually isn't doing a lot if I drop the throttle. Can't much to induce any sort of yaw or anything. But it sure makes up for it between the corners. It goes from the exit to the entry of the next corner so quickly. It's nuts. In fact, driving this thing fast is a matter of getting it to the corner, slowing it down so you can turn it around, and then powering out as hard as possible. It's not a lot of finesse. Kind of clumsy, but kind of fun too. It is so much torque that when you come out, you're just spinning one tire, and this thing has a limited slip. We're still getting a lot of one-wheel peel, and modulating the power again through a corner is just so difficult because there's so much power you have to modulate that the front tires just feel overburdened. And the whole time the steering's going every which direction. Ugh. Like a muscle car front drive hot hatch. Now the Mazdaspeed3's biggest strength, the thing about it that's most noticeable, is its engine. It's just maniacal, the way it delivers power, the way it comes on boost. It takes a while for it to do so. Below 3,000 RPM, there isn't a lot the engine's doing. But once you get above that RPM, the power comes in and it literally pushes your head into the back of the seat. It's pretty incredible. But there is something endearing about that power surge, the way it comes in and how silly it feels. Now, of course, there are downsides with sending that much torque to the front tires, and it is torque steer. You don't notice it so much in the higher gears like 3 and 4 and so on. And Mazda's actually limiting boost in first and second to help reduce torque steer. Now, of course, torque steer is not desirable, but you can't fight physics. And with this much power going to the front tires, it's just going to happen. You just have to accept it, much in the way you have to accept oversteer in an FRS or chest hair in a Corvette. It's part of the equation. And if you can live with that, it's worth living with that with this car. It feels right. This thing feels like a properly overpowered front-wheel drive car. But it just gives these little hints that it was somebody's baby, that it was somebody's project. Because the engine feels so unrefined in its power delivery, you have this kind of constant exhaust drone that you get on the freeways. You have this really like on-off clutch. It's so quick in its engagement. It gives you a lot of feedback, but still super quick. Feels like some sort of aftermarket racing clutch. But all these things, while by themselves would be downsides, together they make for a car that's just kind of charming in its roughness, in its ruggedness. This thing is enjoyable to throw around, to beat on, to feel its rough edges. The quality, though, of this car isn't something I'd say I'd want to take to a racetrack, to an autocross. It's something that I want to enjoy around town, sort of as a front drive muscle car. That's the feel that this thing has. Maybe it's what it wants to be. Something with bonkers power, crazy delivery, and just sort of comical driving habits, at least relative to the hot hatch front drive segment. Overall, the Mazdaspeed3 feels well controlled, and the steering is positive and true. The chassis doesn't exhibit a lot of noticeable flex around corners, but understeer rears its head when you approach the limit. The refined chassis, though, is a funny pairing with that torquey engine, which has this rawness to its character and hilarious power delivery. If you love turbos and the way they surge when you get into the boost, the Speed 3 is huge fun, if not just for the engine.